Okay, and we're at the top of the hour, and when you dialed in here, welcome everybody. We're at the second ANIMA working group meeting, and I'm going to quickly show this as it is mandatory, right? IETF note well, everything you say and write in the IETF shall be used against you in a competing draft. No, sorry, but please be aware of everything written here. I'm not going to repeat it all. All right, so I'm going to quickly skip across everything we said on Monday. The one thing I was reminded of is it may be late in Europe, and if somebody here has a question but cannot actually speak up in audio, please try to find somebody helpful on the Jabber channel to repeat your question on the microphone. Otherwise, I think we wouldn't need an official Jabber scribe to, list the individual slides. The IPR disclosure process also mandatory just for the folks who weren't here on Monday, as a reminder. From the other stuff, I just wanted to say that there was some concern raised about the time management on Monday, that there wasn't time for question. And so I think there are a couple of things to be said about that. First of all, please feel free to reach out to the chairs discussing that. We felt that on Monday there were a lot of really 0-0 works, and those are obviously always difficult to fit into time slots, especially given how we maxed out pretty much 2 hours with the work we have. And please always go to the mailing list, ask your question. That shows interest in the work, and only when we see interest in the work will we basically be able to allocate more time in the future. And obviously, as soon as you're going beyond a 0-0 presentation on a document, we would also expect you to, as a slot owner, manage your time accordingly between, death by PowerPoint and the more important question and feedback from the audience, right? So there are also a lot of other collaborative options, right? Usually after a meeting, we stay around and talk with each other. We can do that perfectly fine in exactly, this room place on Gather.town after the meeting. So I'll certainly be there and invite you to join if you want to have follow-up discussions. But please, anything you do, the more you disseminate it across the mailing list, the more the whole group will be aware of it, benefit from it, and we as chairs will know where there is interest. Okay, so all the rest I can skip here. And we're in our second agenda here. And I'm not going to talk about these as we're going to see them happening. Michael told me I can simply inline the constraint join proxy status update. I'm going to talk about it. And when Michael wants to say something more, he can step up to the microphone. Both joint proxy versions have been implemented and work. The authors are not aware of any issues yet, so the authors are wondering whether this is ready for last call. I haven't checked how many people in the working group had chimed in to talk about whether they reviewed it, what they felt about it. I'm certainly going to do another review. If there are any opinions to be voiced, I'd be happy to see somebody stepping up to the chair and say something positive or negative about the draft at this point. Okay. Well, if you weren't that fast, please bring it up later. So then I think we can move to our slot 3 item, which should be Owen with the Brewski Cloud Registrar. Oh, wait a second, I need to stop my slides. And only then can I click on use, and there we go.
Okay, I'm People can hear me? Okay.
Yep.
An update on Brisky Cloud. So we've done a bit of a refactor. We've added done a bit of a refactor, changes to a lot of the sections, but a lot of it is just editorial and clarification. The content hasn't really changed significantly. Things still to do. So there is a draft in GitHub in the Anima working group GitHub that we haven't actually published yet, but we've made a lot of changes since the last IETF that we haven't published yet. We're hoping to publish it in the next week. We just didn't get around to today. We've updated the securities considerations. We've added sections on how to handle redirects. Are I think the two most significant changes in the draft. It is in GitHub. It has not been published yet, but we hope to publish in the next week or so. We've provided clarifications on how to deal with trust anchors, updates on how to handle redirects, and updates on security issues for the pledge. So how we handle multiple redirects, and we want to ensure that a provisional TLS connection may be hijacked. We want to ensure that we protect against that. So when the pledge connects to the Brisky Cloud registrar, it will enforce mutual authenticated TLS as per the Brisky draft. There are two ways that the Cloud RA can handle that. They can either issue a voucher directly, or they can do a 307. So what we're dealing with here is a 307. When the Cloud RA redirects in step 3 with a 307 to a new location, if the new destination can be validated using standard TLS using RFC 6125, then the pledge should accept another redirect to a final destination. If the pledge cannot validate the TLS connection to the first redirect target after 307, then it must not accept another redirect, and it will establish a provisional TLS and then look for a voucher there. Okay. So what we're illustrating here, after the very first 307 in step 3, when we go on to the next mutual authenticated TLS to a validated example, assuming the pledge can do TLS cert validation here, then it will accept another 307. But if we go down to step number 4 here, and the pledge is unable to do a full TLS cert validation, then it must not accept any more redirects, and it must wait until it gets a voucher. So we've clarified that in the draft. We've aligned the naming convention, IETF voucher foobar, and so we've renamed IETF redirected voucher to IETF voucher redirected. The same pattern applies for IETF constrained voucher and IETF constrained voucher request. We're just aligning the terminology and made it consistent. And that is it, right? There was very little work left to do after the last draft. We've addressed the concerns that were raised last time around. Mostly there were security concerns that have to do with redirects. That is it. Pretty straightforward.
Yep, thank you. I think the adopt is left over from the old slide deck as well.
Oh, sorry. Yes, yeah. Me and Mike were chatting about that. We didn't get time to update it. It has been adopted. Apologies.
Mm-hmm. There is always only one voucher exchanged in the whole redirect process. Do I see that correctly, or are there cases where you might need to ask for another voucher after you get redirected? Because you have
there's only one voucher. So okay. what the cloud RA will do is the cloud RA will either redirect you somewhere else and you get the voucher from somewhere else, or else the cloud RA, what's illustrated here is the cloud RA will issue the voucher directly, and inside of the voucher response will be inside the JSON will be a pointer to the EST domain where you can then go to get your do your EST enroll and get your certificate.
Okay.
There's only two use cases supported in the draft. One is the cloud array redirects you to somewhere else to get your voucher, or else the cloud array issues your voucher directly and includes in that an ES2 domain where you go to get your cert.
Okay. Any questions? Please step up to the microphone.
Recently in email is the applicability
Can
statement.
you, Michael, just so people know who's on the line, can you?
Oh, my name
is raise your hand. No, just raise your hand so that it shows in the chat.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you.
There we go. All right, but that doesn't show up in the video actually. So the queue list is useless for knowing who is who. We should say our names anyway.
No, you can when you are on the microphone, everybody is welcome to show their video.
All I'm saying is that when it's recorded to YouTube, the list of people in the queue never shows up, which is annoying. Anyway, something we have argued about is I've suggested that the applicability statement on this document needs to be quite narrow, essentially pointing at things like onboarding of SIP phones, with the understanding that some people will bend the applicability to be wider than that, versus a very wide applicability, which could be far-ranging and attract a lot of not very useful security criticism for, well, what if you use it in airplanes or something like this, right? And so that my opinion is it should be quite narrow, but I don't know that my co-authors have agreed with me. And so I'm curious what else the working group thinks about that.
Can you describe the, most simple imaginable, use case example that you think is just barely outside of applicability scope, and if so, why?
Something that would I really want to restrict it to not do? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and just in terms of, how do I know that I overstepped the boundary, right? So if you're just making a positive list, I think that it is hard to make complete, right? So it's I always like to understand where's the boundary that I'm stepping over.
I don't know what is on the edge of that, and if I did know what was there, then you could probably convince me to bring it within, right? It's
okay.
All right. So I don't like. There's a gray area where I can't think right now, but there's probably a bunch of things that we could talk about that is like, no, this is not an appropriate thing to do this. There is some logical crossover with SZTP as well, except that it doesn't do a voucher request exactly in the same way. But in terms of the modeling, so there's some stuff like that might make sense where this would be, on the boundary of something, but I don't know what it is. For instance, I don't know, a cable modem probably doesn't need to do this because it probably can find a join proxy within the CMTS, and it's not owned by the end user. It's owned by the ISP. So this might be inappropriate for them, but it might be an example. But I don't know what else.
But that's unnecessary, right? That's not inappropriate. It sounds more like maybe the reason why a positive list is the only thing we can provide is because only for that positive list have we walked through the need to do it, because there is no simpler version, like you said, for the cable modem.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Or because we haven't done the security analysis of other other scenarios.
Right. And what I don't want to have is a 6-month-long security analysis by drive-by review that we had with Brewski. And so I'd like to really up front be able to say, this is what it applies to. And if someone argues, well, but I want to use it for this other thing, we're like, well, that's actually a good idea, right? Let's put that in rather than the other way around.
Or write a follow-up to supersede it if we don't want to wait you finishing up that text while we already are in IESC review.
Somebody else can write a document that says,
yes,
in deploying the Frobits, blah, 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 we use Cloud Brewski in this particular way, and here's the security analysis. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
like the text in the, if you look at what's in GitHub, the text in GitHub outlines the two use cases: one where the voucher redirected to a different registrar, and two where this flow that's shown here. But in the voucher redirecting to a different registrar, it just gives us an example, bootstrapping a SIP IP phone against an IPPBX. But it doesn't restrict or prohibit any other use cases. It just gives one explicit example use case, which is SIP IP phone bootstrapping discovery.
Right, Michael, if you have any particular example of an RFC that makes a good, applicability statement from the formal perspective in terms of exactly these two things, right? Is this necessary, and is the security analysis been done? That's applicability, right? So otherwise we'll come up with one of our own.
So one of the places where I think there may be some space is in the YSUN space, and I'm kind of hoping that Elliot or Nancy or someone else involved in that will say something more about that, because I think that one of the things they had was the desire to be able to move from statically deployed relationships to onboarding process, and I don't know if that's still a desire, but I think this solves their problem.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That was useful. If there's nothing else, then are you done?
Yeah, that's the last slide. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. I think then we're up to in time for slot number 4, JWS. Thomas? So, and if you weren't there in the prep time before, you click on the share preloaded slide, which is right off the hand button.
Right off the hand button. Here we have it. Ask to share the screen.
No, not the screen, the share preloaded slide. Oh, you wanted to share the screen right now, I remember. Yeah, share screen. Yep.
No, ask to share the slide. So is this what you want?
You have animations.
No, I don't have animations.
Oh no, then it wasn't you. Sorry, I forgot. One of the presenters. So then, if you're fine with sharing just the PDF without animations, click on
the thing that looks like a page. You've edited.
On the top where you see, yep, Thomas Werner asked, yep, and
do you really want to share the screen? Yes, I want. Good, let's share this one. Now you can see it.
Yep.
Good. So then let's quickly override. So again, hello from my side. My name is Thomas Werner, and I want to give a quick update on the.
Thomas, could you go full screen? We can see your screen, but you didn't. It's not full screen for slides.
Okay, do that. Document structure. Better? Yeah.
Yeah, very well.
Okay, so I want to give a quick update on this JWS signed voucher. So first of all, so before the name was Anima Jose voucher, and now we did the rename to JWS signed voucher. And then we ask for adoption call. So this is the JWS voucher. What it is about, so in general, it's defining another voucher format with JWS signature instead of CMS signature, which is specified by ROC 8366. And now the proposal here is to have a new format, which is in JWS, which is more or closer to JSON at all. So here again, the document got renamed. So here we have a quick overview from the document. So there is not much change in the content from the individual submission. So I can quickly go over that. So also in the options, so we took a decision to go for JWS compact serialization, but nothing new today on that. And conclusion here is so there was an adoption call on the mailing list. So the draft was adopted in July, and we already got some feedback, which we will include in the next versions, and are also happy to receive more comments on that. And I think that's it already from my side. Are there any questions?
So the one thing I brought up, I'm not sure if there was follow-up on the list. I'm a little bit behind on the detailed things. Was a little bit the how to write about the handling of all the different options that come with the Jose header, which seems to be manifold. And I think Michael brought up the general principle of if it's not described in the document, ignore it, where I think one of the original concerns when we were discussing this for 8366 was that such information could be a side channel. And I'm still not quite sure, how to best handle that in general, right? Not specific to the Jose voucher, but, I just stumbled across this now. So in terms of if the voucher includes all type of crazy elements in the header where the registrar doesn't even know what they are and isn't sure about them, should it be able to not accept it? Should we say that please only include in the voucher what we describe here and nothing else?
Yeah, I think this is something we have to define, as the RFC 8366 defines the voucher itself as extendable. So this should also apply here. But in case there are some objections, maybe is best to reject something the registrar cannot know.
I mean, the problem is it's signed, right? So we can't simply filter and remove it because that would render the signature invalid. Michael,
Yeah,
any opinions about that? I mean, or anybody else on the security side of things? Please go ahead.
So as I said on the list, I think that if we do anything that involves filtering or rejecting things we don't know, then we make it really hard for us to add new attributes in the future, right? We get into the whole TLS 1.2 version debacle that, means that we're running TLS 1.2 forever now. And we have another way of negotiating 1.3 because of things that were enforced in the middle. So I think that if pledges want to have covert channels with their manufacturers, they'll find ways to do it, and I don't think we need to shoot ourselves in the foot here for this. And I think that this is a place where I think that manufacturers probably should be allowed to innovate in adding new fields, and I think that the IETF wants to innovate as well there. So I'm while I'm concerned about covert channels here, they're not that covert, they're visible, but I'm not that concerned about them.
Yep. Okay. Oh, that's a good point. So I was just writing in the notes that this might simply be a good paragraph to write into the security consideration section, right? That we're not recommending any filtering to maintain extensibility, but that obviously implementations of registrars are happy to audit additional fields that are not in need for the version that they're implementing. Sheng, please.
Yeah, thanks. I raised my hand without my chair hat. I'm not sure whether TLS will notice it or not. Yeah, I agree. We shouldn't add any filter for the extensibility, but it's better we give a way or make it possible to have the ability to add such filter in deployment. So if there is need, we can do so. I mean, to allow this to be happen. That would be make this solution completed. Thanks.
Okay. Any other question, comments, concerns? Please provide feedback on the mailing list. I think this obviously was included in the hackathon in the testing, so I think we can ask questions about practical experience in that slot. If there are no more questions, I think we can go to the next slot, which is the Brusky async enrollment. Stefan?
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just asked for the slides.
So, whoops, I did grant it, yep.
Yep. All right, should be visible now. Okay, so my name is Stefan Fries, and I'm presenting the current status of the Brusky async enroll, also on behalf of the co-authors Henrik, Elliot, and Thomas. So the problems that the draft is going to be solved is limited or no connectivity between a pledge and the infrastructure. The infrastructure can mean to the registrar or also to some further points in the infrastructure, like the CA, for instance. So currently the draft has two different use cases, which are bound to the operational mode of the pledge. So the first use case addresses scenarios where the pledge works as a client. So we call it the pledge initiator mode, and it follows the current Brusky approach as defined in RFC 8995. So that means we follow the voucher exchange as defined there, but allow for alternative enrollment protocols to handle situations where we have limited connectivity or no connectivity, to be able to have a proof of identity bound to some of the enrollment information. So for that, other enrollment protocols that provide that functionality could be used, like CMP or CMC, for instance. So the second use case is the one where we did the main changes since the last IETF. It is a pledge responder mode. So what we do there is we reverse the kind of interaction between the pledge and the registrar. So that means the pledge itself is acting as a server, and we call it pledge responder mode. And so the pledge is triggered for certain actions, and we will see that later on. So I have some kind of call flow there that explains the interaction. So what we did since the last IETF was mostly we defined the different objects that are exchanged. So we had two version updates since the last IETF. So in the first one, we have this detailed call flow and also the definition of the different objects that are exchanged for the specifically between the pledge and the registrar agent, which is a new component here that directly interacts with the pledge and has some further interaction with the infrastructure, so the registrar and the mother itself. So the object format that we have chosen there aligns with what is proposed, the proposed format in the draft that Thomas was just showing. So we aligning with the JWS signed voucher. and utilize that basically as a wrapper to protect the objects that are exchanged between the registrar agent and the pledge. So what we did also since the last IETF was we removed the proposed handling of the connection using TLS PSK because we would like to avoid the strict relying on a secure transport channel, which allows to also have some kind of different connections between the pledge and the registrar agent. Those could be Bluetooth low energy or other. Then we further included some enhancements in the voucher request content, which is intended to allow the registrar and also the MASA to verify agent proximity instead of proximity as we have it in normal Brewski. So that is something I have on the slides later on. We defined enhancements in the voucher request Young model to allow for those additional parameters that are provided by the registrar agent. That's also visible later in the call flow, and we further did some terminology alignment. But yeah, regarding naming of pledge agent and the different models pull and push, because it wasn't quite clear for everybody what is the model addressing. So we called it pledge initiator mode and pledge responder mode. So then we had a version change from 02 to 03, and that was mainly to trigger the Young doctor, essentially, because we have certain points in the draft that are related to Young. The one thing is the enhanced voucher request. Sorry, the enhanced voucher request that we have. So this is the enhancement with certain data which is signed and provided by the registrar agent. Then we have an enhancement regarding the assertion enum of the voucher, and I think that will be handled later on in RFC 8366 bis, because the current definition of the voucher doesn't allow to enhance the enum definition in there. And what we are looking for is an enhancement to allow for signaling proxy agent proximity instead of proximity for the use case 2. So that was stated in the draft, but we haven't received feedback from the Young doctors yet. And the last point regarding Young module, Michael pointed us to the SZTP CSR draft, where a Young module has been defined for the CSR to contain the enrollment requests and also allow for different certification request formats like P10 or CMC or CMP as different formats, and we would like to reutilize that, but it turned out that this is not straightforward possible, because we would have to use a complete module and not just a submodule for the SZTP CSR. So we had some exchange on the mailing list regarding that, and yeah, I think that this discussion is still ongoing. So Kent had some reaction regarding that because he is authoring the SZTP CSR draft, and I think we need some further discussion to have a kind of standalone Young module for that. Okay, so just to jump to the abstract view of the use case 2. So thanks Michael for giving me the impression on how the slides could look like to make it more simplified for showing a call flow like this. So the scenario is that we have the pledge, which is that is on the left side. The right side is the registrar agent. And imagine a situation where you're in the basement of the house and the service technician would like to bootstrap certain components, certain pledges that are residing in the basement and do not have any connectivity to the backend. So the registrar agent is provided with a device serial number, so he can either read that or scan the serial number, or is configured with the serial numbers of the different pledges that he would like to bootstrap in the basement. And then based on that data, he provides the registrar certificate, so the LFID EE certificate of the registrar, and also some agent signed data in Jose. So the agent signed data contains the serial number and is signed with the registrar agent's credentials. The pledge on his side then creates a voucher request as normal in Brewski, but in addition, it includes into the pledge voucher request the agent signed data. That data is later on used by the registrar and also by the MASA to vouch for proximity of that registrar agent to the pledge. The pledge also constructs the certificate signing request in the enroll request, also in Jose, to have this additional wrapping signature. And we essentially utilize the same format here for the voucher request as also used later on for the voucher itself. So once this information is available for the at the registrar agent side, he can go to a place where he has connectivity to the backend and then send the voucher that he received from the pledge to the registrar. The registrar itself can check if the agent signed data via the agent signed data that the authorized registrar agent was in contact with the pledge, and then can provide his own voucher request containing the prior signed voucher from the pledge and send that over to the MASA. The MASA in turn also has the possibility to validate the agent signed data and can then issue a voucher with assertion agent proximity instead of just proximity. The difference is that in the normal Brewski run, where we have the client as initiator of the conversation, a TLS channel is set up, and during the TLS handshake, the pledge gets the proof of possession of the private key of the registrar. And in case of the model that I just described here, the pledge just get the registrar certificate via the registrar agent. So he doesn't has a confirmation that the registrar is really in possession of the corresponding private key. So hence the distinction between proximity and agent proximity. So then the registrar sends the voucher further to the registrar agent, which simply stores that information. And then the second round goes runs regarding the enrollment request handling. So the CSR in the enrollment request is sent to the registrar. The registrar unpacks this wrapped CSR and does the handling that he would usually do based on Brewski. He gets the certificate back, sends the certificate to the registrar agent, and then the registrar agent can go down to the basement again, connect to the pledge, and send the voucher and also the certificate to the pledge. So now the pledge is onboarded and can communicate with other pledges or with other devices that reside in the basement. And once he's connected to the backend, he can also talk to the backend and to the registrar. So I probably can skip this slide because that's a verification of the agent proximity. That's just a verbal explanation of what I just was stating parallel to showing the slides. So that the agent proximity is achieved by having this additional piece of information in the voucher request that the pledge is provided with from the registrar agent, and then it makes this round via the registrar and towards the MASA, and the registrar as well as the MASA have the possibility to verify that the registrar agent was the authorized one to onboard or to bootstrap the pledge. And at the bottom here, there's a distinction or the differentiation between agent proximity and proximity. Okay, so the open issues in the draft. So version 3 addresses most of the issues that we have discussed in the GitHub of the ANIMA working group. So we discussed the current state and certain open issues during the weekly meetings of the ANIMA design team. So there are some open issues there. One is the early review of the enhanced voucher request in section 6 by the young doctor. Then the young module for the CSR, as stated at the beginning, to be used for the enrollment request. So what would be great here is if we could utilize something that was already defined in SZTP that frees us from defining some kind of similar information and yeah, would avoid to redefine essentially the defining the certificate signing request model in Young for the same purpose. And then also an open issue is the enhancement of Young voucher with this new assertion type to allow for asserting agent proximity instead of proximity. So besides this, we have stated throughout the draft several open issues and discussion items. So if you read the draft, which I would like to encourage you, you will find some more open issues, and those can also be obviously discussed on the mailing list, or should be discussed on the mailing list. So then, Thomas, I sent some information up front to you, but I think we didn't have the chance to really discuss about that. We were discussing in the round of authors of the draft, we were discussing that currently within the Brewski AE, we have two different use cases, which somehow developed on different levels and also in somehow different level of detail. So use case 1 essentially provides some kind of requirements definition for a potential communication architecture that uses alternative enrollment protocols. So that means enabling something like CMP usage or CMC usage, or also motivating ESD full CMC request, and leaves the voucher handling untouched. And this is more some kind of requirement draft. And use case 2 is really a specification of the reversed call model. So that to have a description of the call model itself, and also about the different exchanged objects and the definition of this new component.
Can we maybe take a lot of these details, to the list? I think because we're running
Sure.
a little bit late on time.
Okay.
And obviously we're going to continue having this discussion on the list, and also as I think has worked very well in the GitHub issues, so that we can keep them apart instead of on the mailing list where it's easy to post them individually. So just for information for the folks on the call here who haven't been using GitHub, that's very good to track these things individually.
Yeah, definitely. So the important question from my point of view is, would that be a way forward that the working group and also the chairs see as a good way forward to split the draft into two separate documents, handling the use cases in separate documents, because they have somehow developed in different directions, and the proposal is essentially to split that current working group document into two new working group documents that focus on just one of the use cases.
I can't answer that from my side as a chair or contributor to the group. I still have to think about that more. Elliot, please go.
Hi, good evening to both of you. Good afternoon, good morning to others, and good evening and good night to those people who are even later than us. I have two very brief comments. The first is I really do think that it's important to split this document. I think Stefan is exactly right in going in this direction. The reason is that the AE draft itself is getting a bit unwieldy, and in terms of its size, and I think it's nicer to be able to slim it down with a pointer to the other work to indicate, here's how we solve problem X, here's how we solve problem Y. Just with pointers, I think that would be a really nice thing. The second point I wanted to make is I think it would be very helpful, and this is a little bit of a plea, and it doesn't just apply to the chairs of ANIMA, but other chairs as well. I think the authors, well, I won't speak for all the authors, I'll speak for me, who's done the least authoring actually. I think it would be helpful if the chairs could help us in terms of issue tracking a bit more, in terms of just catching things to make sure they get open in GitHub or wherever you want to open them, and then just make sure that we're not losing sight of anything that any issue that anybody has. And that's just a request. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Elliot, for the comment. I'm actually more catching up with the GitHub than the authors here, so I think they're very good in leading the ways across the different Brewski documents, also compared to other working groups that I don't think knew how to spell GitHub. So no, one high-level question that was coming up while I was listening to your presentation, Stefan. In Brewski and the voucher, what we did was expanding an existing online CSR scheme, namely RFC 7030, with a voucher. Is there any, existing standardized scheme without a voucher to do a CSR?
Not quite sure if I understand the question right. So RFC.
So think about the whole process that you're defining here, the use case and the solution without the voucher. Does that already exist in some shape or form in the IETF? Michael, please jump in anytime.
Actually, not that I'm aware of.
Is without a voucher, but it involves the user confirming the connection in some way or validating it out of band. And then we have all the CMP methods, which I think Stefan was going to mention. And then we have lots of methods, but they almost all involve, they're not zero touch, including Acme, including other things like that, right?
But the mitigation between the agent and the registrar, is that meant to be zero touch? That's also some or transport, or what do you call that?
So between the agent and the registrar, we can use what is already defined in Brewski. So that is the intention, to not really deviate. So the only deviation is that we don't use the IDF ID to authenticate towards the registrar, but we use the LDF ID from the registrar agent, and we send those wrapped objects as JSON objects instead of sending just a plain P10 request, because the P10 is originating from the pledge and not from the registrar agent.
Well, I was just saying that it would be good to understand if there is or is not a need for a solution without the voucher replicating, what EST 7030 would be for the synchronous enrollment without the voucher, right? So, but we can take it to the list. We're running out of time here. Kent, last one on this thing here.
Yeah, I was just going to say the SCTP CSR draft that Stefan's talking about, hoping to use some groupings from, is able to do the CSR without using a voucher.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. So yeah, please any further comment on the list. So it's certainly important that we get this right, especially on the split up. Any opinions, please bring them forward. But let's here, for the matter of time, move to the last two slots by Michael.
Okay.
You will manage the time between the two by yourself, Michael.
Okay. I'm waiting to share to click on the slides. I think you have to let me. There we go. Okay, so we're doing 8366 first, right? Okay, that's working. All right, so one of the things that came up in doing Brewski AE was writing the Yang to extend the 8360, or writing the Yang to extend the Yang in 83.
Oh no. I assume you folks can hear me, but you can't hear Michael?
I think we just lost Michael's audio.
Yeah, we lost Michael's audio. So let me maybe kick him out so that he gets the note, and then to the chat.
To restart his browser, you just mentioned it on the chat.
Okay.
Hello? Is that better?
Yep, you're back again.
Yeah? I'm live again?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, this happened yesterday to my audio. My browser just lost the microphone, ability to open the microphone. So the thing, this thing happened when we tried to extend the enumerated type. So you'll see in Brewski AE, the new assertion type that it wants to make is, what was it? Sorry, I forgot, Stefan. It was in your slide. Anyway, I won't waste time remembering what it was. Proximity.
Agent proximity.
Agent proximity, right. So we said we wanted to add a new item to this enumerated type, and we went, oh, this isn't allowed. We can't do this with Yang with an extension the way it was. And so we kind of fished around like, what is the right way? And there's a mechanism. That's the problem. New type of assertion we'd like to have. And so one mechanism that in Googling we came across, and I'm hoping that Kent might be able to tell us something more about this, using this empty leaf mechanism that allows us to do some new things. And it looked really hacky, and it wasn't clear whether it was really blessed or something that just slipped through. And, you know, people said, oh, you could do this. And people said, oh, no, please don't do that. That's terrible. I don't know what the story with that is. However, the other thing that came back is that there is such a thing as an IANA managed Yang module. And in this case, what happens is that we say that a particular part of the module has an IANA registry for it. And then we write some IANA considerations for it. And then whenever somebody like Brewski AE comes along and follows those considerations and allocates a new value, then what happens is that IANA essentially revises the Yang module that they keep, produces a new one with a new date, because the Yang modules are versioned by date, and boom, we have a new module and everyone's happy. Okay. And so if someone has existing code and it's working fine, then it continues to work fine with the version they have. If someone wants to write new code, well, then they need the new module. At this point, I don't think any of us are generating code from the Yang module directly. So even if someone does something weird that's unlikely to have any effect at this point, at some point in the future, probably somebody will be doing code generation from Yang modules, but that may not really apply to objects at rest like vouchers for that. So what we've done so far with this document is we've turned the XML from 3 years ago into Markdown. You use the Martin Thompson makefile instead of the kind of hacked together one that we used before. Extracted the Yang module to a file, added some rules to make sure that they get generated right, and we posted a new document which should be word for word identical to the other one. So the plan is to get agreement that this work needs to be done, and this is the right process. Get the working group to adopt the 00 as being essentially identical to 80, should be 8366, not 8633. Sorry. And then we will make deltas to it as a working group going forward. And I think that's the whole conversation. So please come to the line. Rob,
is it fine for Rob to jump in here?
Let's talk now, and then we'll talk about get into the other stuff. Go ahead, Rob.
Just a very quick comment. I don't know if you have a reference already for the IANA stuff, but if you don't, then section 5.1 of RFC 8294 might be a good one to copy. I'll send you an email.
Okay, I didn't catch what you said, but yeah, please send an email. Okay, that would be great.
And then from the process side, I think the 00 should have, a statement of intent of what the scope is of the change, right? That's intended to be done.
Well, my intention was that the 00 would be word for word identical. So the working group would say, we have an identical document to the RFC, and then going forward, it requires working group consensus to change, so that you know that what the conversion process didn't screw something up or slide something in, sideways that didn't belong.
Yeah, but typically when you do an adoption, you're trying to have an understanding what the goal is, and we do have an understanding of what the goal is, right?
I leave it to chairs to tell me what to do. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's not the process I would pick, and not what we did with DHCP v6 bis. But tell me what to do. I want to continue on if that's.
I'll take it outline with Rob and
okay.
Sheng. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me switch slide decks. Waiting. Push the button. Torlist, push the button.
Push the button. Yep.
Push the button. Thank you.
Oh, Shane did that. Yep.
Constrained voucher hackathon. That's what we want. Okay, so this is about constrained voucher. Version 13 was posted on Sunday, pretty early. And a little bit of a reminder, if you don't know what it's about doing Brewski with replacing a bunch of protocols with smaller ones. And here's a large pledge being onboarded that I found on the internet. And finally, I wanted to let you know that there is a brewski.org that collects all this kind of stuff and that you can edit by sending GitHub RSS, a lot like cbor.me. So changes since 110. We've basically fleshed out almost all the raw public key considerations. We switched to referencing the published RFCs, 3 directorate reviews, of which we've opened 37 issues, but we haven't dealt with a lot of that yet. Thank you very much for those reviews. There's another slide. We removed some of the requirements with respect to discovery, recognizing that when there's a joint proxy or something like that, you can't actually do any kind of discovery. But in some cases, the registrar can be discovered using CBOR COAP methods rather. And well, you can look through the diff yourself if you like. And I've proposed, we haven't done it yet, but we've proposed to change the module name from IETF constrained voucher to IETF voucher constrained. I'd like, so that's a bit of a bike shed issue, but I'd like some opinion from some Yang experts as to whether this is even worthwhile or whether I'm just being silly for that. So that's about that. I thought they would sort better. I thought it would be more clear how things went together if we name them that way. And I don't think it has a material effect on implementations in any way. In fact, the running code won't matter because it's all translated to SID codes. About that, so we got some directorate reviews, 3 reviews. There's a bunch of issues. Thank you to Russ, Daniel, and Hank. Russ did his directorate review, like I think Torless pushed the button at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I think we had a review by 2 p.m. So that was really cool. And the other 2 generated a bunch of stuff. We did not have security considerations when we had the sector review, but that's why we were interested in an early review. What do you think that, of the security that's there? Among things that we forgot to do before the hackathon was to do an early allocation of TBD3. We had set a value, which we forgot to tell people during the hackathon, that this for among some of the implementers. So 65502 is one of the private use content formats. And I think that early allocation is in progress. So let me quickly get, and I'll mention the SID documents, which we depend upon, are in IESG review. There are some big red discusses you can see, and your help in fixing the document would be over in the core working group would be greatly appreciated. Hackathon. So last week was the hackathon. Seems like ages ago now. We had quite a number of participants. We met daily. Go ahead, Rob.
Just a quick comment on going back on the SIDS one. I think you questioned whether you could, if you changed the name of the module, whether that would be okay. I think that would mean you'd have to reallocate new SIDS for them. I think the SIDS are bound to the module name.
Yeah, you're right. If we had passed the working group last call and it was now part of IANA, then I think you're right. As it is, we just hacked the SID file and fixed them.
Oh, fine. Okay. Then
yeah. So I think that at this point it's early enough that it's still in the working group and it's still in internet draft. I think it's our change control, not IANA's. So
sure.
So I think we're okay that way. At least nobody has complained about that, and that's partly what I'd like to hear is if there are some complaints about that process. So hackathon. So we had ESCO, IoT Consultancy, Peter Vanderstock. I think he's working for OCF and Fairhair. Aurelio, who comes from the Swiss University of Technology. Torlis joined us, myself, and we had Thomas from Siemens, all had implementations there. We couldn't use the IETF L2 VPN because it wasn't really ready enough for people to do some things with. And so we were unable to do any of the discovery testing. So we basically had our pledges talk directly to each other's registrars by explicitly telling them where it was. And we had a bunch of things, and we basically met every day at what was for me 10 a.m. for an hour or so at the Table A hackathon. We had a lot of work. It felt like there was some ways more smoke than fire, because I don't know if anyone actually got a voucher issued in the process. At least no one said so. And on Thursday, we had a presentation from NIST's NCCOE IoT onboarding group, and I tried to upload their slides to the presentation materials, but I think the chairs deleted them, so I'll try uploading them again. They gave us a half-hour-long presentation of a project involving putting this in a lab starting in September, but it's kind of too long for this meeting to talk about. So issues as we hit the top of the hour. Well, so we forgot to do the early allocation. I and a couple others realized that we had a problem with getting CCM 8 turned on, and finally was turned there. One of the questions is, should we allow CCM 8 on the registrar to Massa connection? I have a slide for that. There's more issues, X5 bag. There's issues open for there. I'm not going to have time to go through all of them. I'm not going to skip that. I think this is the most important one for the group. In the COAP makes the CCM 8 modes the mandatory to implement, and so people want to do that between the pledge and the registrar. But then the question is, are you allowed to use that mode between the registrar and the Massa? Because typically that is not a mode that is enabled in standard TLS, and all the other modes are enabled. So the question is, should the Massa allow that, such that the registrar essentially could use CCM 8 on both sides and not have to have any other ciphers? Or do we tell the registrar, no, get with it, you're on the internet side of things, not the constrained side of things, and so please just use the standard TLS list? That's a big question. I'd like to have some opinions.
The answer that I gave in the ACP, where I was constraining a lot of the IPsec profile, was also just to think that, it's all software on non-constrained devices, so just follow the standard TLS spec. I'm not sure if that's, the same reasoning we can apply here.
I don't know either. There was a questions about the CN. My opinion is that we shouldn't check the CN because that's what a draft from Rich Salt says to do. So apparently it's the default in embed TLS in some parts, is it just checks it. And so that was easy. And so I think we need to say, do something harder, unfortunately. Not going to go into this issue. It's too big to talk about in 1 minute. We discovered some errata with respect to server name indicator in 8995. And so I've opened now 3 errata on this. One of mine got lost. I refiled it. And so that should be on the list. And if there was any time, we could have discussion.
Yep. Thank you very much. Lots of good work and lots of issues to walk through on the list and the GitHub. Please upload the NCCOE slides before the window of opportunity to attach them to the meeting here to the closes, right? So maybe right now after the meeting. Rob?
Just a quick comment on the errata. I think I've seen 2 of them, not 3 of them. I've not looked at them that closely, but it looked to me that maybe they would fit into perhaps hold for document update rather than being verifiable in terms of the scope of the errata. It's the 2 I was thinking of.
Okay. While I have you on the mic, how about the early allocation? Did you look through it? Warren was saying he was happy with them, but it's your yes or no we're waiting for.
Yes, I need to follow up that. I think it's fine. I think there was a separate email about just including an email address for the structure of it. I think the custom raised an issue. I don't know if that's been fixed for the media type, but once that's fine, I've got no issues with it at all. So I will get back to you.
All right, thanks. Thomas?
Yeah, just a quick update on the hackathon results. So we managed to do a successful round trip and receive voucher with our Siemens pledge from the so ESCO's Masa IoT consultancy. So just to let you know. That's it. Thanks.
Right, and I think with this we've reached the end of the scheduled agenda.
Happy
Do
to
we?
leave test instances alive, so we're going to continue interoperating between meetings, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. And if there are more interest people, so let us know and feel free to join us.
Yeah, and I think, best way would be to discuss that on the Thursday meetings. That's in the chair slides, the coordinates for the Brusky design team. So that's probably going on according to plan. Yeah, Sheng, any more chair words for the end?
However, given that seems we are short for time for both sessions, we should consider to ask the slots request earlier next meeting and try to get better time management. And hopefully the speakers could respond to our chairs earlier than before. We did have issues each time to have very last minute slides, so that makes the chairs work very hard. So we are calling the support for everybody to help us to better manage the time by support by apply your time slots and give the chairs slides as early as possible. Thank you all.
All right. Yep, and I'll go hang out before the room in gather.town. So otherwise, see you all hopefully next time at IETF 112. Well, maybe in person, but let's see. Thank you, and bye now.
Cheers. Bye.